a few different. We've flown
Thanks,
a few
Alex.
different spots on the Olympics, and we haven't really poked around, but we've all, stared across the sound and seen those beautiful days where there's a high base dreaming of, maybe flying deep over there. But I think to do a flight like that, the level of commitment is so high that I think you need to be, mentally and physically prepared to do it. And that's why I'm kind of excited to hear from Keith as to what he put in to be able to, unless he's a psycho and he just fucking launched on one end and flew to the other end and didn't think about it at all, which knowing Keith, I don't think that's the reality. I'm sure he put in a lot of thought and was very careful about the decisions he made, the day he picked and the route he flew. So yeah, it was just like next level as far as, flying something unique. And the level of commitment and the knowledge and skill that it took was just, I don't think there's any flight anybody could do this year that would take Keith off the Sawtooth Award for this year. It's amazing.
That's really cool. I remember you talking about that and how spectacular it was to be able to do something like that, and me thinking like, yeah, I guess so, but I just didn't think through it. I remember driving through there and seeing those low clouds and that spectacular terrain and going like, I wonder if we'll ever see a paraglider in here. But yeah, no, it's actually really fantastic, really cool to see that. All right, let me go ahead and jump into this and see, do we have any new members here today? Anyone who wants to say hi really quick? Whether you're a member or not, just say hi.
Yeah, this is my first time here. I'm one of Steve Wilson's students, and just got the link if I'd hop in and see what you guys are about. So, hello.
Very cool. John, right?
John, yes.
Very nice to meet you, John. Thanks for coming on. Yeah. Awesome. Anyone else? Cool. All right. Well, in that case, Sherry, I promised you I'd let you go ahead and talk about our fly-in for this weekend and where we stand with the current plans. And
thank you. I'm ready. How many people are here?
got about 27.
Awesome. Hi, everybody. So if you haven't signed up for the fly-in yet, it's this weekend and we're excited. We have all kinds of stuff. So we have a food truck coming. And it's great because he's not making us guarantee anything. But he's going to be there for breakfast and lunch, basically until from about 9 o'clock to 4 o'clock. It's Friends with Benny. And I called on so many food trucks. It was crazy. And now I forgot who recommended Friends with Benny. Anyway, thank you to who did it. And I'll try and look back and figure that out. To thank you personally, but thank you very much for but the food that they have, the pictures that he's shown me have been absolutely amazing. And he's got a diverse menu, so hopefully if you have a suggestion of what you want, I can pass that along and maybe he can incorporate that.
Yeah, if we could do something gluten-free, that would be really good. Very allergic to wheat, but otherwise
I will ask him.
Awesome, thank you.
Yeah, I know he does vegetarian and dairy free, and sorry I didn't ask specifically for gluten free, but I will ask him.
Awesome.
Yeah, sure. We have not part of the fly-in, but two guys are putting on tree clinics. If you guys didn't get any information on that, it's kind of amazing. So I don't know if any of you know anybody who's gone into a tree lately, but it does happen at Tiger. So if you want to learn how to rappel yourself out of the tree, he's going to find a tree somewhere in or near the LZ and set up a little clinic there where you can actually practice getting out of a tree and rappelling yourself down out of a tree. And he will also he has like tree kits that he'll show you so that you can go out and get your own tree kit, what you should have in a tree kit. And I don't know the particulars. Like I said, it's not part of the fly-in, but it is going to be the same weekend. So I'm looking forward to that. He's not charging anybody for anything either. but it should be pretty good. Sorry, my husband's phone is ringing. Hang on just a second. Sorry. Mark, your phone. Sorry, guys. Bad. Okay, so then we have a raffle. Santa Croce is bringing up demos, and he's also bringing up prizes. So we're going to raffle some off, and we also have some other prizes. Some the same people that are putting on the tree clinic has offered to do some reserve repacks, so we can raffle those off. We are having Chris Santa Croce is bringing up tons of demos. Thank you to everybody who's put in your request, and if you haven't, please do so now, because he's shipping stuff up here, and he'll also have to carry last minute items. So if you have not requested something to demo yet from Superfly, let me know quickly. Let's see, we're having a barbecue on Saturday night. It's a potluck barbecue, and we are going to provide some drinks and some hamburgers, chicken burgers, veggie burgers, and hot dogs. So it's a potluck. Bring whatever you want to have go with that, and we'll just hang out and have some fun. Also, I need volunteers, guys. I need drivers for shuttles, because we're going to have shuttles going round trip, and shuttles to and from the high school. So we'll need shuttle drivers, because nobody wants to sit in a shuttle for 8 hours a day. And we need people on launch for crowd control to make sure that the public stays off the launch pad, and fluffers to help get wings out efficiently to get more people off the hill correctly. We have Alex and Mitch said that they were going to do briefings both mornings, Saturday morning at 9 a.m. Or thereabouts in the LZ, a daily briefing as to whether, hazards or whatever has come up, questions that anybody has. And that's it. It should be a fun weekend. It's supposed to be cloudy both days, so unfortunately be just a bunch of sled rides, but it will be a good chance for everybody to try out a bunch of demos, speed wings, mini wings, whatever. So anybody have any questions? Anybody out there? Hello?
Does he also have harnesses and that kind of thing?
Yep.
All righty. I might be interested in picking up a new harness. So
shoot me a text or shoot Chris a text as soon as possible, so we can get that up here.
Okay.
Hey, am I muted? Hey guys, Sherry.
Yeah.
I got a couple. I've got an SOV scheduled this weekend, so unfortunately I'm not going to be at the fly-in. But there's a couple of things that I'd like to contribute. I've got a bunch of Fat Tire beer, so I'll send that down with Scott, so you guys can enjoy some nice ice cold Fat Tire. And I'd also like to offer a free SIV, so you guys could add that to a raffle. So to help raise some money to go towards the concrete bulk toilet in Chelan.
Awesome. And you've also donated a couple of vans, so I don't want, I want everybody to know that is from you as well, Maddie. Thank you very much. That SIV on the raffle is awesome. Thanks.
Yeah, you bet. I'm sorry I won't be there to join you guys, but yeah, hopefully it's a fun weekend, and it's really cool what you guys are doing. Thank you, George, for getting the car park and the camping in the LZ. That's pretty special. So hope it's a fun weekend for everyone. Thank you.
Yeah. To be clear, 98% of the work there was put in by Sherry. So.
Well, thank you, Sherry.
Well done, Sherry.
Welcome. Just let's make it a success. Let everybody come out and hang out, and no matter the weather, it doesn't matter. Just have fun. Nobody get hurt, please.
Yeah, actually, good transition. Two things. We do have a button on the website. Thanks, Alex, for setting that up. So anyone who can't make it but wants to donate to this project, please use our NWPC donate button on the homepage. the club will be matching $2,500 of that towards that project. And that's one of the main reasons we're doing that was the main driver behind the flying this year. Thank you, Sherry, for putting in all this work to get this thing organized. But that was the spark that got us thinking that we should have a fly-in, was this project. So
couldn't have done it without a lot of help from you and Alex and Austin and Matt. Everybody that did help. Thank you.
Yep. And then the second thing is one quick reflection that we've actually had a pretty damn good year as far as incidents and injuries at Tiger. There have been a few, but not as many as we've had in the last few years. So I just wanted to say, whatever you guys are doing, awesome, and keep doing it. I think a very large contributing factor to that was all the work that Austin and Maddie and Owen and other people have put in at the beginning of the year to bring awareness, and all of you guys for keeping safe and having a blast out there. It's been a fantastic year as far as records and some new things that have happened in the area that we just haven't seen before. Cool. Well, I think we should go ahead and move on to you, Keith. And yeah, we're all like super excited to hear this. So go for it. It's yours.
Cool. Sweet. Thanks for having me on, George. And thanks, Maddie, for that introduction. Cool. Yeah, I was just gonna chat a little bit about the Olympics crossing that I did a few weeks ago. I was gonna start out by just kind of talking about the route planning that went into it, and kind of the scouting that I did in person. Then kind of move on to kind of the weather forecasting that I was looking at, and then kind of finish off like talking with the kit that I bring on trips like that, and then lastly like the flight itself. So I'll start by trying to share my screen and kind of just go over on like how I went about it initially. So let's see. So yeah, the two main tools that I really enjoy using are like Google Earth is great, and then Gaia Maps in conjunction with that usually kind of tend to be a good pairing for using this for a lot of the 3D topography, and then using Gaia for seeing what kind of the trail systems, landing options could be and whatnot. So the site that I flew from is Mount Eleanor, so it's right here, just north of Lake Cushman. And the reason I was kind of looking at that one from a starting point is a pretty common wind direction in the Olympics is coming from the southwest. So along that, paired with like sun aspect, that's kind of usually a good bet for kind of doing those longer cross country flights. If you can have a little bit of a tailwind, and then when you're making all these jumps from ridge line to ridge line, you have the tailwind plus you're always going to a sunny aspect. So then when I started kind of looking for a line, I was just kind of looking for what seemed to be the best connected with less big kind of crossings. And right off the bat, there's just one that kind of just stares right at you, just going south to north right there. So then it was kind of just doing a lot of time, zooming in, panning around, kind of seeing how to connect those features. And kind of what I got to looking at was from Mount Eleanor, you can kind of start and kind of make your first few moves here, and then kind of still maintain your good landing options, which you kind of have one here, you have one here, and then you have a good sandbar here. So the nice thing about it kind of starting with that path is I was looking at it, I still have this good landing option, so I can kind of test out the day before getting overly committed. And then once you're here, it was kind of just a matter of following these prominent ridges here, and then kind of going across. And then this is kind of a natural ridge line that I was looking at, jump here, and then kind of going up and working out here. So once I kind of had that general idea, I tried to break it into sections. And a lot of that was done with kind of in-person hiking along with looking at the maps. So the sections that I kind of broke it into to make it kind of a more manageable project was kind of into quarters. So the first quarter was kind of Mount Elidor to Mount Stone. And the reason for that is I've actually done a lot of hiking back in these areas here. I used to live in Shelton, just about an hour from Mount Eleanor. So I used to do a lot of speed flying on Mount Eleanor and just a lot of hiking on my days off out here. So there's Lake of Angels right here, which I've hiked before, and it's like a really good meadow. So that's like a really manageable landing option with a good trail system out. So I knew that was kind of my first good landing option once I was back there, and then kind of my last good one for a while as well. So kind of this first one was kind of that first kind of crux there. And then the second portion, kind of this is West Peak and Anderson Peak. I kind of did that as kind of the second section. Just because Mount Anderson is kind of that center point, kind of midway. So it made for like kind of like trying to figure out what that next section would look like. In here, it starts to get a little bit thinner with landing options and trail systems, but you do have some potential side hill kind of meadows. You have this, which would be pretty interesting and pretty nasty because you could probably be in the lee of the wind direction. But so that was one really kind of big unknown for me, was what that crossing would look like. But once you're over here, you're kind of on a bigger feature. And then the other nice thing is actually, I kind of spotted this with some kind of looking around, is Enchanted Valley is a pretty common hiking spot. And it was just had a lot of photos of the area. And by just looking at different photos of that, I was able to kind of determine that that would be a realistic landing option, although it is about a 15-mile hike out. So the nice thing that I found there is there'd be kind of this crux through here, but then if I could get to here, then I would have this as a good landing option. So that almost kind of protected this portion of the flight in here, where if I had to, I could bail on this ridgeline and utilize that. And then going into breaking up the second half of the flight, kind of another big cruxy section was kind of from here all the way to Obstruction Peak to about right here. So that was kind of a big unknown as well. Just that's, I would say that's kind of the more remote section of that, of this ridge system. And then what I was kind of imagining by this point, I figured I'd have a good day, whether the day was working or not. And then this was kind of the part of the terrain that I was really concerned about. Just not any landing options, no trail systems. Like if you landed back here, you'd be looking at a 20-mile bushwhack out if you had a safe landing. So that was kind of a concern there. And I'll kind of talk about that a bit more when I talk about like the flight and the conditions that day. But I actually spent some time hiking out to about this area here, to these ridges over here. So I actually got a good view on a lot of this stuff. And I was able to kind of determine this is just a huge alpine meadow that you could land at. You'd be looking at a really long hike out, but it would be a pretty reasonable landing option. It got kind of thin in here, but some of these actually made for some pretty good alpine meadows. So you have some good options there. Once again, they're kind of in a funky location because of, you'd probably more often than not have southwest wind out there. So you'd be kind of dealing with a lee and rotor back in there. So it would be far from ideal, but in an emergency situation, there was potential options back in these areas. So what got nice is when actually hiking out here, before I hiked out there, I was kind of imagining a lot of this to be kind of like bigger scree field type of terrain. But I was actually really pleasantly surprised that a lot of these saddles are actually quite reasonable and manageable terrain, that you could land on a lot of those high saddles, which is nice because generally on those higher saddles, you have less rotor to deal with, where in the middle of the day, it could be quite thermic, which raises a concern. But once again, if you were to sink out, you have those high saddles as potential landing options. So I kind of thought of that as the third quarter. And then the last part of the flight, which was interesting, is kind of the exit from the terrain, since it is the national park and it's just, I always thought of the line as like being aesthetically finished by making it out of the mountains. And that's where the exit from this terrain kind of came to be a bit tricky, because kind of, as you can see, you don't have as prominent ridge lines, and then you also have this massive gap in either direction that you look, with just a lot of forested area, with not very many landing options. And then once again, if you were to get to any of these prominent peaks, you have outs at kind of each one, But then after that, once again, you have this really big section of forested area before you get to anything else. So when I was hiking out there, while I was out there hiking, I was using Gaia a lot to actually calculate my glide ratios to these different exit points. And then again, calculating that glide ratio to the different potential fields. And I drove around to a lot of these fields looking at what those would be. Because sometimes like on this, like it's really hard to tell if this is side hill with a lot of clear cut, which could be pretty nasty, or if it would actually be a good field. So in person, this is actually quite ugly, and you wouldn't want to be landing there. But stuff like this, there's actually a surprising amount of power lines, but there's options. So just getting an eye on that stuff really went a long ways. So what I'm kind of referring to by like landing options on these is right here, like I was saying, that saddle is all pretty reasonable. And then kind of looking closer at a lot of these spots, you do have small options kind of at each one of these spots, but then it is a committing line to get there. And then once again, a committing line to exit. So once I kind of had that, the idea of kind of breaking it into more manageable sections, I started to try like the sections more independently. And a lot of that I did with mapping online, using Google Earth and Gaia. And a lot of it I did in person. So we can kind of take a look at what kind of my Gaia maps look like and what I end up doing. So I do a lot of like drawing route lines to kind of get mileage. And then I can do a lot of glide ratio calculations. And then a lot of these waypoints are actually going around in person and looking. I didn't do all of them in person, but a lot of them I did in person. And then waypoints, so I know where these potential landing options are. And then I can kind of get an idea of where the more committing sections of the flight are. And kind of looking at it almost like a climbing route in a way of like, if you can protect your moves, it makes it more feasible to make those moves. Where if you're running something out, then you're more committed, and it's kind of you're messing with that your odds a little bit, or that margin, you're reducing your margin. So yeah, I kind of went through and started kind of planning a lot of those waypoints, what my potential outs would be, what my potential exits would be, and just getting a lot of that kind of down. And it made it be like, oh, this is actually feasible. So I can go through some of my photos from kind of scouting via hiking and doing some small flights out there leading up to it. Let me see if I can. So this is from a couple weeks before I went up and flew Mount Eleanor. So this is kind of looking out towards Brown Lake, towards the north.
Keith, you have to do a new share and share the other window.
Okay, let me.
You just click the share screen button again.
Yeah, is that working?
Yep.
Cool. So this is Mount Eleanor at the top looking north into the Olympics. Then here's kind of soon after launching, thermaling up. So you can actually see in the corner there, I don't know if you can see the mouse, but that's the meadow where I tend to launch from. There is actually another option up high as well. But that, if it's on, that meadow is a little bit more reasonable. So this is kind of 2 moves in. Does it work? Are you able to see the screen at the same time?
Yep.
Okay, cool. So this is kind of a couple moves in, looking from Copper Mountain here, looking south at Lake Cushman. And then this is kind of from that same spot, turning around, heading northeast. So that's Mount Cruiser area, which, yeah, it was really beautiful out there. So this day I was getting up to about 6 over Eleanor. And then once I started making those moves, I was getting up to about 7.5. So to give you an idea, most of that terrain back there, the peaks are kind of between 6 and 7. So this is a couple more moves back. And then that's going to be no, that's actually looking back at Mount Cruiser. So the ridge that I came out over. And then, so this one, going back a photo, is Mount Stone. So what you can't see is that lake that I was referring to is kind of right here, and that's Lake of Angels. So those first kind of moves were really well protected, or you kind of reach, once you're on cruiser, you kind of have a section that is kind of thin without any landing options. But then once you get out here, you have a really good landing option right below you. Although it would be about a 7 or 8 mile hike out, but with a trail system, so not too bad. And then on that day, I just kind of wanted to get back there, see how that first section would work, and kind of peek over the back and see what the next step would be. So from here, I just flew the line that I came in on and flew back out to Mount Eleanor. So that's on my way back out. So this is from a different day on the north side of the park. Kind of driving out around Obstruction Pass, looking around. So this is where I was kind of really pleasantly surprised at the type of terrain. It was actually just huge alpine meadows. It's really unfortunate that's a national park, because it would just be incredible flying out there. But yeah, and then those would be kind of not really ideal. It could get pretty nasty down in those bowls, but in an emergency, there are some options back there. And like some of this terrain, like, yeah, those ridges there, like that's a pretty feasible landing option on a high saddle. And like, yeah, all that kind of, there's options back on that north side. So that's looking north. Yeah, so that's looking north from Obstruction Pass. So from the map, let me pull up that map again to give you an idea. That's kind of standing, yeah, about right here, kind of looking north at this ridge. And then it's after that ridge is where it kind of gets really thinned out and really forested for a while. And then that's on the north side, kind of looking south towards Mount Cameron. And that's west, or that's Anderson Peak and West Peak, which were kind of the center point of that crossing. And then it's kind of just looking down, down into the valleys. So I guess one thing I didn't quite really note when I was going over some of the scouting and landing options was basically all the landing options I found were high. So it's kind of this interesting kind of flying. It's like, you don't really ever want to get below ridge height. And if you do, you kind of have to make that decision to land immediately. You can't really, play around and scratch. You kind of just got to go to those outs early, which kind of doesn't really give you a whole lot of second chances to dig out low. So yeah, this is just kind of flying around that north side. Once again, I just kind of headed in and did a few moves in just to kind of get a feel and get like peek back there, see what the terrain would look like, and then kind of made my way back north. And then once I had it that day, as the day progressed, I actually started to get quite a bit of a west wind, probably about 15 kilometers out of the west. And there was a good cloud street forming off of this kind of line in here. So what I did is, yeah, I flew back kind of into this area. And then there was a good west wind forming and some clouds over to about right in here. So I decided to try that exit out to the east, knowing that I had kind of a landing option out here. And then this is kind of my last, like this terrain is all pretty, it's spines, sharp, rocky spines. So no real options there, but you do have some options in here for high saddles with, trail systems, which is quite nice. And then a good landing option out here. So with that west wind, I decided that was a realistic exit. And then I actually got much better glide ratio, better climb. So I decided to fly out all the way to the water and ended up landing on this kind of little peninsula sticking out there. So yeah, it was neat kind of flying and landing next to the ocean, and some people came out and were pretty stoked on it, gave me a ride just back into town. So that's pretty neat. Cool. So I was going to talk about just kind of the weather forecasting that I'm using for that kind of trip. So I use SkySight quite a bit. And I just find the wind grams aren't very reliable because like the wind grams for the Olympics are right here on the edges. And there's just nothing really, there's no wind grams farther in. So I still look at them kind of as a cross check, but I was using SkySight primarily. And this is actually back on the day where that had that flight. So yeah, this is kind of the forecast I was getting that day, like lower lift on the edge. Around 4 or 5 is kind of what it was forecasted. And then in the center, 10.5, which is the highest that I'd ever seen it. Like the previous days that I was flying in there, the forecasted top of lift was like 9,000. And the first time I was probably getting around 7.5, maybe 8. And the second time I was getting like 9.95. So it seemed to prove pretty accurate. So I figured this had potential to be a good day to go out there and test it. So this is kind of at the heat of the day. So I did kind of do a lot of checking just to see kind of how the day progressed, which there's some really cool functions on there to kind of get more in depth. I don't want to get too into the weeds with it. And then using this for surface wind and winds aloft as well. But what I really like to use for my winds aloft is aviation weather wind charts. And I don't know I'd highly recommend this site because you can kind of go to different elevations and then you can get a really good idea of what systems are moving in and kind of what to predict. Because what you don't really get with the point forecast and the wind grams is that you don't really see where that edge is and where, like, sometimes like something right here could be really good, but what you don't see is that right next to it and just like 50 miles to the west, it could just be nuking. And that, like, if that system moved in a little bit sooner, you could get blown out really easily. So I think this is a really good site to use for a more general overview. And it's so yeah, if anybody wants to kind of bug me more about that, I'm happy to give you guys more information. Just check that out later. And then lastly, I just kind of cross-check with mountain weather. I find that's usually pretty reliable. It kind of only goes to peak height, mid height, but it's just kind of my final check to kind of see if everything's in line and things are making sense. Like all the forecasts are kind of on the same page. Yeah, and then before I get into the flight, I was just going to kind of talk a little bit about the kit that I take on trips like these. I usually like to be self-sufficient for up to 2, sometimes 3 days, depending on the type of trip. And what that looks like is like I have my basic kit, which is kind of a like multi-tool, headlamp, Garmin, water, extra layers, tape, sunglasses, water tablets, lighter, all the maps I needed for the area. And then when I get into more specific kit for paragliding, it's kind of your typical harness and wing. And then I bring a tree rescue kit, a repair kit, electronics, layers, all that. And then I think what changes I almost always carry it with me, but what changes with mountain flying is I almost always have an air mattress, just a really lightweight one. And then the food and water. So always trying to start out with about 2 liters and then always having water tablets at the very least, and sometimes a water filter, depending on the location. And then food, 2 days minimum. I almost always carry that when I go flying. And what that looks like for me is 15 to 2,000 calories per day. So that would be kind of at a deficit for a long hiking day, but you can pretty sustainably efficiently sustain off that at a calorie deficit for a few days and be just fine. So that's kind of what that kind of kit looks like for me for mountain flying, is being ready to hike at least an extra day and potentially 2 if I ended up out in the bush somewhere and had to do some adventurous bushwhacking per se. Cool. Yeah, I guess I can kind of get into the flight a little bit. So I already kind of mentioned the forecast I saw for that day. When I got to launch, the day was pretty promising. It was some of the better thermals I'd seen at Eleanor, and pretty early, even as early as like 10:30. But I'd kind of estimated the airtime or the time in flight that I needed to get to obstruction pass, which would kind of get me out of the deep terrain, and then wouldn't fully exit, but I'd be out of the really deep terrain, and then also be in a place with good landing options. And I kind of estimated that to be about 4 hours, thinking that if I could keep a pace of 10 miles per hour, which is, I feel is like pretty moderate for mountain flying at a slow kind of methodical pace. So with that, I was thinking, all right, when should I, like launching around noon could be good, because then I would have the noon to 4 window to really utilize that, what looked to be the good weather window. So I actually really had to kind of be patient on launch to not rush myself and get off earlier. So yeah, kind of launched around noon, and then almost right away started getting good climbs, and kind of just worked that same flight that I'd done a couple weeks prior. Over to Copper is kind of where that one is. And then, yeah, kind of working back to Mount Cruiser. And when I was kind of just had this little, like phrase that I kept repeating to myself throughout this flight, was like, explore everything and take everything. Because you're just not getting that high over the terrain initially, and you don't have a whole lot of time to make that decision until it's like, oh, I have to go land right now. So having that extra 50 feet, having that extra 300 feet, like that just made such a huge difference a lot of times. And this was actually an interesting move here, because I saw some clouds. I'm just going to pause it for a second. I saw some clouds forming back here, kind of. So this was that first kind of quarter of the flight that I was referring to, before it got a little bit deeper. So that I knew this was kind of a crux move here, and I saw some really good clouds forming over. I'm spacing on the name of it right now. I think it's Duckabush. But
hey, Keith, can I stop you just for a sec?
Yep.
Hey, for everybody else, if your screen is set up the way it automatically set up for mine, move the images on the side to the left, and you'll be able to see all the statistics and Keith's altitudes, his glide ratio, his climb rates, and all that sort of information. But it was hidden from me until I moved everyone's heads to the other side of the screen. Thank you, Keith. Sorry, keep going, man.
Yeah, no worries. So I saw these clouds forming here, but I knew if I like kind of left that climb low and to go for it, it probably wouldn't be there. So I kind of watched the whole thing recycle, and then when it kind of shut off, I was kind of being patient and trying to get a little bit more before making that move. I don't know if that actually really did anything, but it made me, yeah, it just made me feel a little bit more optimistic that maybe I'd be getting something new by the time I got there. So I just took a little bit more altitude before making it, and sure enough, that's when I knew the day was on. And just, yeah, I got up above 9 and was pretty stoked at that point, because I knew I had to move through that kind of cruxy, more remote section in here. And then I was even able to kind of jump a lot of some of the bigger terrain that I was expecting to have to fly it through and kind of work my way around. So this is kind of another point where, like, after West, so this is kind of when I was going over the route planning in this valley here. There's some riverbeds that would be good options. So I knew that I wanted to wait on this ridge and wait for something good before pushing deeper. So I didn't want to rush that move over the north side of this feature. So I actually started to get a little bit lower down to ridge height, but pretty soon after found something. And that was enough to, with kind of the clouds I was seeing that day, was enough to convince me that it was worth it. And then, yeah, sure enough, once I got over the back, it was getting almost to 11,000 feet, which I had no idea. I was expecting to maybe top out at 9.5 or 10 that day. And then, as you can also see, once I got past West Peak, I was also getting a lot of southwest wind, which after that, I was making much better time than I thought. The glides were, yeah, gliding over deep terrain with lots of margin. I was getting 15 kilometers per hour above 9.5, and then it would die down a little bit underneath that. So yeah, when I stayed high, I was just getting these really good drifts and really good glides. And with that, with the south component, I really wanted to try that exit to the north. So just stayed over the high terrain. Came in a little low to Mount Angeles. Kind of, it looks higher than it was. I was probably like, third below ridge height. But yeah, just took what I needed and to make that glide out over this terrain. And then once I was here, I had options all over. So I was pretty excited. And once I knew I had the ocean on glide, knew I had to go land at the beach. It's just a pretty special way to end it. So yeah, I can show you a few photos from that day, and then kind of go over any questions if you guys have any questions. So this is kind of just taking the ferry over the night before. Kind of, it was cool because it was just like staring at that whole ridge line that I was hoping to fly, which was pretty neat. And then, so this is, I didn't take any photos early on, but this is West Peak and Anderson Peak here. So that's kind of right in the center of it. And just, really cool alpine lakes back there. There's really, looked like some really high base on the north side with kind of good recycling clouds throughout the day. You can kind of see that they are a little bit windswept. So this is, I'm probably over Mount Cameron here, so about 2/3 of the way across it. Oops, skip one. Couple. So this is looking back at it. So this is looking south. Once again, that's kind of looking south. So that would once again be Mount Anderson and West Peak there in the center. And then this is kind of Obstruction Pass area. And then that's Mount Angeles in the distance, and then Hurricane Ridge. So that's kind of that ridge that there's not, once you kind of leave this field here, you don't really have much for that 7 to 8 mile stretch. So yeah, that's kind of what you're looking at. So as you can see, you don't want to end up in the valley there. It would not be pleasant. And then this is from Mount Angeles looking north or looking south. A couple more, and then flying out to the water and kind of found a nice beach landing there. And I was pretty stoked at the end of it. So, and it was pretty cool. So I started hitchhiking back, and I called a buddy who I used to live with in the area, and he told me, he's like, if you make it to an airport, I'll come pick you up. So I got a last minute ride back to Shelton, which is pretty neat. So gotta fly back. So yeah, pretty fun day out. That's kind of all I really had. So if you guys have any questions, I'd be happy to go over that.
Well, that's pretty epic, flying out and flying back.
Yeah.
I mean,
I was lucky.
How awesome is that?
That looks so incredible, Keith. One question I have while other people unmute and ask other questions is, you mentioned you actually took quite a bit of time to plan all that stuff out. Obviously, you hiked it all, but what was kind of like your timeline for that?
I didn't start looking at it that seriously until this summer. So I used to live out there, so I'd spent a lot of time hiking back there just when I lived out there, not with the idea of doing this. But at the time I was doing a lot of speed flying. So I was, flying quite a few of these places. So I'd say from when I started looking at it seriously, from like, oh, this could be a thing, it actually was only about a month, which that would just happen to be because that's how the weather lined up. And there's like really good weather consistently out there, which kind of yeah, I felt like once I kind of had things in a row, I was like, oh, well, the preparation feels, I mean, you can always do more, but it felt like I was at a reasonable place to potentially go for it.
Yeah, so cool. I kind of feel inspired to just go hike the place now.
Yeah, it's a beautiful area.
Cool. Other questions, other thoughts? I know we have a few people here that like to shoot for stuff like that.
What's next, Keith?
Yeah, I got a couple ideas, but until, yeah, I'll just have some trips I'm planning, but kind of keeping them. Yeah, I'll let you know when they come around.
Nice.
Great presentation, man. Nice job putting everything together.
Thanks.
And yeah, thank you for sharing with us. That is just incredible.
Cool. Yeah, thank you guys for having me.
Yep. Cool. Any other questions? I get this opportunity again. Cool. Yeah, nice job, man. Congrats. Great flight. Thank you. I guess we can move on to finance stuff. If Alex, if you want to follow that with an exciting.
I don't know if I can follow that. That's like the $1 million flight right there. Yeah, thanks again, Keith. Sure. So just to get this out of the way, usually we do like a mid-year treasurer report. And so as the treasurer this year, I just put something together for the kind of the mid-year, but then also just for where we are now, so middle of August here. So the kind of the breakdown is we have roughly 17,000 in the bank, which is a bit up from the end of last year, which was 12,000. The memberships income is so far this year through August, middle of August, we're looking at like almost 10,000. And we did get a pretty significant number of visitor memberships. And I think this is for coming in for the fly-in, which is going to be this weekend. And then also, I think the Chelan comps people, as they made their way back, would come through Seattle. So that was cool. And then in terms of expenses, we have a number of large one-time expenses. So for example, the AstroTurf and the LZ and is our biggest expense this year, coming in at almost 2,000, just under 2,000. And then every year, the club does pay for the road grading as part of our agreement with DNR at Tiger, so the Forest Service road. And then we had our rattlesnake work party, and as part of that, we also bought some tools for the club for clearing out launches and stuff. And so this $500 expense kind of goes towards it bought some club tools too. So if we want to organize more of these work parties to clear out other launches, we now have some tools to do that with. And then one that we're still in progress here, we're actually putting a weather station and a little mast up at South Launch. So far, Derek Baylor, thanks Derek, if you're on the call. Yeah, we've already kind of bought some of the parts for that and put some of that together. And I believe the status is we're just waiting for a good window to go up and dig a hole and pour some concrete. So that's going to be up there soon. That'll be cool. And then everything else is kind of just usual monthly and yearly stuff. So the website, we pay $20 a month for that. The PO box, we pay $188 a year for that. And then DNS, this only happens every few years, so that's like $20 a year. And then the fly-in, most recently, we submitted the USHPA insurance, event insurance for that. So roughly looking at, yeah, 9,000 in income and 4,500 in expenses. So far through the year, we're up about 5,000. So that's about it.
Very cool. Thank you, Alex. Yeah, that's a big part of that is, again, just to remind everyone, Scott Stabbert put in a lot of work this year, negotiating this year and last year, negotiating with DNR to take over a lot of the expenses for toilet maintenance and for other projects that we're doing up top, and then with King County to take over trash pickup and other expenses that we're paying at the bottom. So we are doing much better financially than we were last year because of that. Also, Mark Chirico and Seattle Paragliding have done a lot of work on maintenance and things that we normally would have had to pay for, like, you know, trimming grass and things like that, and keeping up the maintenance of the launches, which helps us save money as a club. So that's great. That means we can use the funds hopefully for things like the fly-in and other things that we can do to improve both Tiger Mountain and the other sites around the area that we all frequent quite a bit. Yeah, quick update. Actually, we are waiting on approval from DNR for that weather station. That's part of our land use agreement, is that we have to get their buy-in, and they're kind of running it by a few people before they give us the okay to continue on with the South Launch weather station. The hole is dug and we have a form in place, so we'll be ready hopefully shortly to continue on with that work and get that weather station set up. That'll be really neat to have that. And we are still doing a little bit of cleanup on the AstroTurf that we installed. There's still a couple of tasks that are left to try and get some of the rubber pellets that are, or rubber infill material, trying to remove as much of that as we possibly can from the LZ, due to some concerns that were raised by some of you guys, and also by King County and some of the other people around the area. So we're gonna continue working on that a little bit, and you'll see a few changes in that area. And I think that's all we have. So if you guys want to bring up anything, or if you just want to like open up some conversations or talk about some cool projects or ideas, I do think that after the fly-in, one of the things we'll pick back up is temporary structures, putting more benches perhaps, or seating areas or shade structures at the LZ. We'll probably start looking into that again. But any other ideas you guys have for improving the site, please let us know. And any concerns, you know, either here or email to flybod@nwparagliding.com.
Right on. Thank you. Hey, so what is the theme of this year's fly-in? Do we have anything special going on with that? Costumes or anything like
that? Safety. Yeah, no, that's the theme. No.
Okay, fair enough.
No. Again, the biggest thing is we want to try and raise some funds for the Chelan project for setting up toilets up there. That would be a really great improvement for all of us who fly there, but also for the competitions and for the other clubs around the area. We can talk more about that, but that's the primary thing. And then, yeah, we're going to have shuttles, and you'll just be trying to get people out on what looks to be a really nice, potentially ridge soaring, if not thermaling day.
Sweet.
Yeah. One other quick update is, you know, as a club, you know, if you haven't renewed your membership, you know, you should. we're trying to. I feel like our primary role here is to maintain a good relationship and keep access to the site, and keep DNR, King County, and the city of Issaquah happy with us, and having a channel of communication so that we can, you know, continue enjoying the site and improve it and build those relationships up. Mark Whiteside recently took the initiative and scheduled a couple of meetings with I think the Alps Trail Association, the Issaquah Alps Trail Association, and also with the city of Issaquah. We got to meet with the mayor, and they are extremely happy with us. And they're, I think her words were, it brings joy to the city to see you guys up there, and they definitely want to work with us to to help support that and to help keep that going. So that was such a cool meeting to have. We're kind of bracing ourselves for, oh yeah, traffic and parking and all kinds of issues, and they were just like, oh no, it's so great to have you guys here.
Right on.
Yep. And yeah, we just have to keep doing that, keep that in mind, be kind and respectful to hikers and to fellow paragliders and to new people that come to enjoy the site, and share this awesome thing that we have here. It's really cool. That's all I have. Yeah, go. If anyone has any other topics, anything that they want to say, or just say hi. If you do have cool flights, please let us know. Go ahead, Maddie.
I have a question. Has anybody been up Rampart lately and checked out the road? The silence is deafening. Okay, so I guess that's a no. All right, well, cool. That was one thing I've been kind of curious about. How's the smoke out in Eastern Washington? Anybody out there checking out the smoke?
Last year I had inquired about Rampart, and I heard that the road is pretty impassable with rocks and stuff in the way. That's all I heard. Yeah.
Okay, cool. Thank you. Yeah, we kind of heard the same kind of thing, but that's why I was trying to get it, see if there's any updates. Cool, bummer. All right, well, I guess we need to do a work party on that road at some point and go up there with some manpower and some tools and roll some rocks around.
Yeah, sounds like fun.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Actually, it'll be really cool. There's a lot of these sites that I haven't been to, and I would really like to. It'd be really cool to start working on putting together some road trips for some of these sites and just kind of maybe do a presentation out on them, or just kind of like go check them out and see what the status is.
Yeah, I could take the van out there if I see a good forecast, and we could go early in the morning with a couple extra hours up our sleeve and take some manpower up and roll some rocks around. But unfortunately, I'm busy on the weekends doing the SIV clinic, so it'd have to be a midweek thing.
Yep.
But if anyone's, maybe I'll put something out on the Northwest Paragliding Club page if I see a good day at Rampart, and if people want to come along and lend a hand and fly possibly if the conditions work out. It'll be fun.
Yeah, that'd be an awesome idea. I think you'll probably have a few people who are willing to do that, probably even short notice.
Cool. Awesome. Thanks, guys.
Cool. Well, if that's it, then thanks everyone. Thanks, Keith. That was insanely cool. Thank you for doing that and for presenting it.
Yeah, no problem. Thanks for having me.
Yep. And thanks again, Sherry, for all the work. I think she's probably already gone to sleep, but thank you for all the work, and we're looking forward to seeing everyone this weekend at the fly-in.
Fly safe, everybody.
Thanks, Mark. Yep.
Thanks again, George and Keith.
Yeah.
That was great.
Thank you,
Thanks
Alex.
so much,
Bye.
Keith. That was
Yeah,
amazing.
that was super
Thanks,
cool.
George.
Yeah, thanks guys. See you later.
Bye.